$20. I'll give you extra. Whatever it is.
It doesn't have to match
Okay.
the thing on the following.
All right,
You got that in there?
I got it back. Okay,
No, no,
Marvin Young.
Ryan.
okay. All right, so we're now on the Yam. Okay, so what happens? He's given him this coin as a matana. Okay, and so therefore it's now been deconsecrated. Okay, that's the case. And
What's going on?
therefore he can buy whatever he wants with it. Okay. And here secondary produce of okay, and now okay.
Is everybody getting it found? I'm not.
Yeah, you got the sound?
I was locked out of the meeting. I couldn't even get in.
Me neither.
You're on
I'm
now.
all right. I'm good now.
Can you
I
both?
can't hear him though.
You can't. Okay.
No.
Now you should be able to hear. Anywho,
You're breaking up badly, Ken.
Yeah.
must be the connection because I can hear you guys. Okay. That it's the second, that it's the secondary Shemitah
No, that's not working.
says Rav Ashi, machloket b'pri sheni. Therefore, the argument is in regards to the secondary item of a pre-rishon, all right, but with first items, in other words, original Shemitah produce, divrei hakol, derech mekach en, derech chilulo. That there it has to be through purchase and not through redemption. Okay.
Wait, I don't even know where we are.
41A.
All right. So I.
He's frozen.
Out there, and the fact that it teaches achar shvi'it, echad shvi'it, ve'echad maaser sheni. The fact that it taught that similarity between Shemitah produce and maaser sheni, my shvi'it, asks the Gemara. What do we mean here then by Shemitah produce? Okay, demei shvi'it. Okay, so this would still be Rav Ashi's explanation. Okay, that it's money we're talking about that has been redeemed or okay for Shemitah produce. The ilo temahachi, because if you don't say so, right? Maaser mamash. If you're going to say it was tithing, okay, are you actually talking actual tithing? V'haktiv, but wasn't it written in the Torah, v'tzarta hakesef biyadecha, that the pasuk says what? You have to, I'll say the word exchange, put the money in your hand, right? Ela demei ma'aser, hachanami demei shvi'i. It too, therefore, it must be referring to monetary money. In other words, that is what has been the secondary produce. In other words, that the money was changed and redeemed and therefore could be used for other things. Okay, we go to a new Mishnah. We're in the middle, so to speak, of Mem Aleph Amud Aleph.
Thank you. Finally found it.
Okay, ראשונה היה לולב ניטל במקדש שבעה ובמדינה יום אחד. Originally, says the Mishnah, that one would take the lulav in the Beis Hamikdash, okay, for all 7 days of the holiday. That, of course, excludes Shabbos. All right?
Some say it could be in Shabbos.
Okay.
There's more talks about that.
Okay, but others, and in the environs, I'm going to use that term, okay, it was only 1 day. Now, why is this Mishnah significant? And it's significant for our purposes to understand perhaps there's going to be a machloket as to what the status of Jerusalem itself is. Is Jerusalem to be considered like the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore in Jerusalem also they needed to take the lulav all 7 days? Or is Jerusalem going to be considered like the environs, okay, like the rest of the country, and then they only would take it 1 day, the oraita, and the other days it's simply the rabbanan? Okay, so I point that out, okay, as we're now going to continue with the Mishnah.
Rashi very clearly says that the Medina means both Yerushalayim and everywhere else outside.
Yeah, that's Rashi.
That's Rashi.
Not everybody's going to agree
not
with
everybody agrees
Rashi.
with that, but
That's the point. That's why I said we've got to ask ourselves the question.
Right.
Okay. All right. Mishacharav Beit Hamikdash. Once the temple was destroyed, Hitkin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai sheyehelu lavni tal b'medina shiva zecher lemikdash. Okay. We all know that that was the practice that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai established a number of gzerot, and this was considered one of them, that the rest of the country, Zeicher Mikdash, would also take the lulav the other days. Now, that would seem to imply what?
You take it on Shabbos.
Well, I'm not even getting there yet.
Is that Rabbanan or Midoraisa?
Rabbanan, exactly. That would
Right.
seem to imply that it's Rabbanan.
Rabbanan.
So what else, says this Mishnah? V'sheyehe yom hanaf kulo asur. Okay, Yom Hanaf was the day of basically waving the Omer. Okay, it was to be done on the 16th of Nisan. Okay, because one couldn't eat the new produce until after the Omer was observed, waved in the Beis Hamikdash on the 16th. And the custom was to do it, assuming Kohanim's reason, right? That they would do it first thing in the morning. And so therefore people in the community, in the environs, okay, could therefore start eating Chadash by that afternoon. Okay, what happens? However, again, Rabbi Yochanan with a Gezerah, what's he saying here? Okay, namely that he's telling us Yom Henef Kulo Asur. Okay, that could no longer be the case. With the temple destroyed, you can't assume any Kohanim are going to do the Omer first thing in the morning on the 16th. So, right? So therefore, since there's no temple, right? So therefore, people could not start eating
Chadash.
actually the 17th.
Right.
So a separate, let's call it Gezerah by Rabbi Yochanan, but they're putting it in here in this particular Mishnah. Now, what happens? So our Gemara starts. Mina lan da'avdinin zeichel mikdash. On what basis? Asks, if we're saying it's going to be a D'Rabbanan based on zeichel mikdash, what's the basis to declare that one could do something like that? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying the Amar Kra, because we have a pasuk that now tells us Ki ele arucha umam kotech, right? Arucha lach umam kotcha apecha. I'm going to read it right from the Art Scroll. Ki ale arucha lach umimakotayich erpaich neum Hashem. For I will make a cure for you, and from your wounds will I hear you. Okay, Ne'um Hashem, the words of Hashem. Okay, Kini decha ka'ulach. For they, the nations, called you discarded. Sion he doresh aim la. She is Zion, there is none who will seek her. Doresh aim la, from that words. Okay, so therefore he says, right, what happens? Okay, Sion hu doresh aim lach. Okay, doresh aim la miklal debaye drisha, and therefore he darshaned that this implies when it says you have to expound, you have to seek. Therefore, one had to seek a way of remembering the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore that's his basis for arguing Gezerah Zecher LaMikdash.
Mikdash.
Was this in between Shabbat and between Bayis and Bayis also? Did anyone just said anything about that?
Not that I could see. Okay, but it was a number of Gezerah. Remember, the shofar issue was also a Gezerah. Rabbi Yochanan. Okay? Okay. V'sheyehei Yom Henef. We said that was the day of waving the Omer, right? My tam. Okay? So what's the reasoning? Mehera Yivneh Beit HaMikdash. Okay? Now, this isn't a wish. We might have thought the language of the Gemara was saying, let's hope and pray that the soon. No, this was a feeling that it will be built soon. Okay, and since it will be built soon,
You have to know what to do.
right? They're concerned. Okay, Eshtakad, last year, Milo Achalnu Baha'ir HaMizrach. Weren't we then, in other words, able to eat the morning of the 17th?
60,
Okay, we were able to eat right away once the sun rose,
right?
right? Because we assume Kohanim's reason that they did that very early. Hashta nami nicho. Now shouldn't we be able to eat? Ve'inhu lo yade the ishtakad the lo hava beit hamikdash. Okay, and they don't necessarily know and remember that last year there was no Beis Hamikdash, right? He'ir mizrach hitir, and therefore then, when the Beis Hamikdash was in existence, sunrise was the permitted time to eat it. Okay, hashta the ika Beit Hamikdash, but now, okay, that there is a Beit Hamikdash again, Omer matir. We have to, so to speak, wait till the fact that again, for the Omer to be sure to be offered before that permits us to eat Chadash, right? So the Gemara then continues and says, the Ibane Emat. When is it going to be built? All right. So the Gemara then raises the question, Lema de Ibane Mishitza. If you're going to say that it's going to be built on the 16th itself, Harei Hitir Ha'ir Mizrach. That would then say that that would be permitted to eat the Chadash once it's sunrise. Ela de Ibne Bechamsar Mechatzot Hayom Ulahalan. But if we're going to say that maybe, okay, based on the idea that the Beis Hamikdash, the third Beis Hamikdash, okay, clearly was going to be built in its entirety and come down from heaven, okay? If we're going to say that it was going to be built, let's say at midnight, right? That's the case. Ulahalan Tishrei, Tishtare, and therefore after that it would be accepted, all right, permitted to eat it. Dahatnan. But aren't we therefore taught elsewhere in another Mishnah, Harchokim mutarin mechetzot hayom, that those that were some distance from Jerusalem were permitted to eat the Chadash from the middle of the day. Ulahalan, ulafi she'ein beit din mitatzlin bo. And why? Because
I want to just ask a question on the previous paragraph, previous line 9. There seems to be the difference between the waving of the Omer and the sacrificing of the Omer.
right. Okay, so the implication would be once it's they would wave it earlier and then do the sacrifice, right? And so once the waving was done, that waving of the Omer would permit, okay, the eating of the Chadash.
But the conclusion is that until it's sacrificed, it's not permitted.
I didn't see that.
I saw it at the end there. There in the Davidson Talmud that I'm reading here.
Okay. One of the notes of Art Scroll.
It says,
And the Omer will be thus brought. The new grain does not become permitted until the Omer is actually brought. In the absence of the temple, the Omer offering, the new grain becomes permitted immediately upon the daybreak of the 16th. Okay. That was the note there in Art Scroll.
and here it says, until the Omer is offering is sacrificed, the new grain is not permitted. Interesting.
What, the translation?
Yeah, the translation.
Okay, well, that doesn't necessarily agree with the note.
Right, yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you.
All right, Lafi Shein Beit Din Medatzlin Bo, because we say, all right, that the Beit Din would not be lazy about it. No, it says Shricha. Right, no, we say that it had to be said. Why? The Ibane Belelia. Maybe it was going to be built, the Beit HaMikdash would be built at night, okay? And it would come down during the night. And therefore what happens? Inami Samuch L'Shkiyat Hachama. If that's the case, or maybe it would be built just before daybreak, okay, in that case. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is there going to say, Amar Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, Beshitat Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Amrinan, the Amar Min HaTorah Hu Asur, okay, that he would argue, right, that from the Torah, it would be prohibited, right, to eat it, okay, without, if the temple was rebuilt, right? Why? Dichtiv ad etzem hayom hazeh, as we go to the top of Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, okay, until the etzem of the day, the essence. So what do we mean, the essence of the day? Ad itzumo shel yom, to the very essence of the day. Okay, that would mean perhaps the midday shel yom. Ukesavar ad va'ad bichlal, and we consider that not only up to, but up to and including. Okay, so therefore it would have to be to the very end of the 16th. All right, is the point that it's saying. So the Gemara now asks, Umi savar lei. In other words, does Rabbi Yochanan, okay, hold to that same opinion, kivate? Vaham maflig paligala. But he's arguing with him, all right? The Tanya, as we see in a Braita, Mishacharav Beit HaMikdash, Hitkin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shehei Yom Henef Kolo Asur. That once the temple was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan made a takana, a decree, okay, that the day of waving, in other words, eating chadash on that day itself, the 16th, is forbidden. Amarlo Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda says to him, V'halo min Torah hu asur, but from the Torah isn't it forbidden? Okay, dichtiv ad etzem hayom hazeh, because it's written until that middle, okay, the etzem of the day, ad itzumo shel yom, until the very essence of the day. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda hu the katai, says the Gemara, but it's Rabbi Yehuda who is making the mistake. Why? Hu savar midurabanan kama. He was of the opinion that what Rabbi Yochanan was saying was actually Rabbanan. In other words, declaring it a derabanan. Velohi midoraita kama, but he wasn't saying that it was based on the Torah itself.
The truth is, he was saying it was based on the Torah.
Well,
Like
we're going to
he
get to
says,
that.
Like Rabbi
We'll
Yehuda
get to that in a
himself
second. We'll get to that in a second. You're right, Rufi. Okay. Vaha hitkin kamar. Why? Because our text said that hitkin, that he made a takana, implies that it's a the Rabbanan. Gemara says, Mai hitkin. What does it mean when it says hitkin? Darash v'hitkin. Namely, that he derived, he expounded from the Torah, and therefore used that as a basis for his takana. Okay? So that's the case.
So it's merely derisa.
So it's really then he was saying that Rabbi Yehuda made the mistake, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai actually found a Torah basis for making that prohibition of Chadash on the 16th.
16th.
Okay. Now we go to a new Mishnah. Okay, the following. Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag Shechal Liot B'Shabbat. Okay, what happens if the first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbos? Okay. The question would be what to do.
Not about the rule.
What to do about the lulav, right?
Right.
Kol ha'am. Okay, so this Mishnah is telling us, what do? Kol ha'am molichin et lulavehem lebeit knesset. Everyone brings Erev Shabbos their own lulav to the shul, right? L'macharat, and the next day, mashkimin ubaim. They get up early and they come to shul. Kol echad ve'echad makir et shelo, and each one recognizes his own lulav. Why? Because he put it on his own
A
regular.
simon on it.
What? Okay, right. So what happened? That could be the only assumption I could have, is that they had makom kavua in the
Right.
shul, and everybody put it in their own seat, and therefore they would go and take their own lulav, right? V'not lo, right, and they would take it. Mipnei she'amru chachamim, ein adam yotzei yedei chovato b'yom tov harishon b'lulavo shel chaveru. Right, that he cannot use his neighbor's lulav on the first day, right? Ushar yemot hachag, but the rest of the days of the holiday, adam yotzei yedei chovato b'lulavo shel chaveru. That a person on the other days, he may use his neighbor's lulav to satisfy the obligation. Now, Rabbi Yossi Omer, says Rabbi Yossi, Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag, right? The first day of the holiday, Shechal Liot B'Shabbat, it becomes V'Shachach, and let's say he forgot, V'Hotzi et Lulavo L'Reshut HaRabim, and he carries his
Carried
lulav
it to shul.
into the public domain.
Right.
What happens?
What's
Says
right?
Rabbi Patur mipnei shehotzio b'rishut. Why? Rabbi Yossi was arguing that he's exempt from any obligation, chatas, okay, for example. Why? Because it was done b'rishus. It was done with the permission, in a sense that he was going to do it to fulfill a mitzvah. Okay.
I see.
Now, so the Gemara is going to want to challenge and clarify.
How do we know that?
What basis is this? In other words, where do we find this law in Torah? The Tanu Rabbanan, because it says ulekachtem, you should take, namely, shetehevekicha yad kol echad ve'echad. Okay, that it should be in the hand of each and every one. Okay. Not only that, but it also says lachem, mishelachem. But it's got to be your own. Lahotzi et hasha'ul ve'et hagazul. And we're saying that to exclude a borrowed or a stolen lulav. Okay. Now, mikan amru chachamim. Here the sages say as follows: Ein adam yotzei yedei chovato b'yom tov harishon shel chag b'lulavo shel chavero. That therefore, on the first day of Yom Tov, one cannot use a neighbor's lulav; they must use their own. Ela im kain, not nu lo b'matana, except unless it was given as a gift. Okay? And now we get a little story here. okay, to try to, I'm going to suggest to try to support this bright. Umaaseh b'Rabban Gamliel, b'Rabbi Yoshua, b'Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, b'Rabbi Akiva, shahayu ba'in b'sfina. Okay, that these sages were traveling together on a boat. V'lo haya lulav ela leRabban Gamliel, and only Rabban Gamliel had a lulav. What? How do we know that this was a very expensive lulav? Shelakhu be'elef zuz, that it cost 1,000 zuz.
Wow.
Now, Cohen had a interesting side note here. Okay, in case we wanted to understand how valuable that lulav was, that 1,000 zuz would be equivalent in their day to 8 months' wages. Okay, so yeah, I thought that was an interesting little side note.
That's
All
why
right.
he was the only one who was able to afford it. The others are not probably couldn't afford it.
Right?
That's not logical.
Why isn't it logical?
Stuff grew all over the place over there. You know,
No, but I know-
Esrogim are growing all over Israel. The Lovim are growing all over Israel. Ravos Hadassah are
Okay,
growing all
so
over.
maybe we should understand it, that the cost of all for meaning was 1,000. Would that satisfy your?
No, I'm saying, like, in Galicia, they only had one lulav in Esrog in the whole town. You know, and
But
that's
the-
why everybody benched with the rabbis.
But the one on the boat, then listen,
Right.
has to tell me where they're coming from. Remember, they go all kinds of going back and forth to Rome. So
Okay,
if they're coming from Rome, you know, closer to Israel might not have been that.
Greece, they had.
Right.
They probably want you to be funny.
Yeah.
okay. But your point is well taken, that it's surprising that only Rabban Gamliel was the only of the, I mean, look who you've got listed there,
Right.
okay? So in other words, that's the case.
Unless this was after they came out of the cave.
Who knows? Anyway, what happened? Shalachu be'elef zuz. Not lu Rabban Gamliel v'yatzabo. Rabban Gamliel took the lulav in it, and I'm sure it means all four meaning, and he fulfilled his obligation. V'nat nula Rabbi Yoshua b'matana, and he gave it to Rabbi Yoshua as a gift. Not lo Rabbi Yoshua v'yatzabo. Rabbi Yoshua took it. We assume he benched, and then, right, was filled his obligation. V'natnu Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah b'matana. Okay, and he gave it to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah as a gift. Okay, here's again, Erwin, your point is well taken, because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was considered very wealthy.
Yes.
Okay, so why couldn't he afford his own? Right, right. So what happens? Right. All right, or maybe they all chipped in, okay, to buy the lulav, okay, and that's what it's worth. And Rabban Gamliel, as the nasi, or the head of the Beis Din, he was the one who had the authority to have it watch over it. Not new, right? So what happens? Not lu Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, v'yatzabo. He took it, used it, filled his obligation. V'natnu b'matana Rabbi Akiva. Then he gave it to Rabbi Akiva as a gift. Not lu Rabbi Akiva v'yatzabo. Okay, he fulfilled his obligation. V'hichziro l'Rabban Gamliel, and he gave it back to Rabban Gamliel. Okay, so the Gemara asks, Lamali, why did he give it back? Lamemar hichziro. Why do we have to say that he gave it back? Milta agav urche kamash malan. In other words, they're teaching us something else along the way. Okay,
And Matana Manat Latsky, yeah.
well, that's the question. Milta agav urche kamash malan. What is it teaching us? Mana almanat lahachzir shma matan. That's our point. The gift, even though it seems to be going to be returned, okay, is still considered a valid gift. The Amar Rava, like that which was said by Rava, namely, ha etrog zeh almanat, right? Shetachzirehu. here's this etrog that you can use on the condition you return it to me. Not low, Sabo took it, fulfilled the obligation, Ichziro, Yatsa. Okay, therefore, and he returned it, Yatsa. His obligation has been fulfilled. Lo Hichziro, Lo Yatsa. If he didn't return it, his obligation of having done Arba meaning is not done. He had Lamali Lameimar Shalachu Be'elev Zuz. So the Gemara then asks, well, why did you tell us? Why did you have to tell us the price, okay, of this lulav? That it was 1,000 zuz? Lo diache kama mitzvot chavivot. To tell us how dear the mitzvot were for them. Amar le mar bar amemar, the Rav Ashi. So now we have a new statement. Okay, the following. Abba, okay, and this is really, when I thought about this piece of Gemara, I'm going to put out the following idea. Okay, okay. Now, and you'll see why I'm suggesting it in a moment. Abba Tsaluye Kamitzale Bey. He says, Mar Ba'amemer said his father would pray holding the Arba meaning. Okay? Now, I'm saying Tzluye here, I'm going to suggest, I have no proof, okay, to show, but I'm going to suggest it refers particularly to Shmona Esrei. That's my suggestion. I have no proof. I didn't see it in Art Scroll. I didn't see it in Koren, but I'm suggesting that the language here, okay, is
So
such.
it's just the brachas. Every time the word is used, it meant to Shmona.
Right, right. That, okay. Meitive. The Gemara is going to challenge and raise the following objection. Lo yochaz adam tefillin biyado v'sefer Torah b'cheiko v'yitpalel. That a person should not be holding his tefillin in his hand, okay, or a Torah up against his body and chest and worship. V'lo yashtin bahen mayim. Nor should a person be holding them when they have to urinate. V'lo yishan bahen. V'lo shinat kava. V'lo shinat arai. And a person should not be sleeping with his tefillin on. Either a little dremel, a little nap, or a longer sleep. Okay? So that's the point, right? So what happens? Va'amar Shmuel. And Shmuel says also, he's adding to that statement. Sakin, a knife. V'ka'ara, all right, or a plate. Kikar, a loaf of bread. Umaot, or coins. Hare elu kiyotze bahem. These are similar to these other items. In other words, one shouldn't be holding any of these things at the same time that they're davening. Okay? Why? And that's why I also connected again the Shmona Esrei, because one is going to be concerned lest they might drop one of these other things, and therefore it takes away from their kavana of paying attention to their davening and Shmona Esrei. Okay? But again, that's just my suggested pshat, right? Hatam lav mitzvah ninu v'tari baho. Why? We might say there's not a mitzvah. And those lulav and esrog is a mitzvah. But with those other things, there's no aspect of mitzvah. And therefore the person might be concerned and thinking about them. Whereas if he's got lulav and esrog and he's holding them, okay? All right, and remember, when do we do lulav and esrog? Right before Hallel. When do we do it? After the Amida. So it's like juxtaposed right between the Amida and Hallel, okay? So that's again another reason that made me think that Sluye might refer to Shmona Esrei. Anyway, Tanya, Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok, and Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok says as follows, Omer, Kach haya minhagam shel anshe Yerushalayim. This was the custom of the men of Jerusalem. Adam yotzei mibeito v'lulavo biyado. A person would leave his house in the morning and he would have his lulav, an esrog, in other words, his arba minim, with him. Holech lebeit knesset. He would go to shul. Lulavo biyado. He would have his arba minim with him. Korei kriyat shma umitpalel ulilavo biyado. He would recite kriyat shma and the daven. In other words, the whole regular davening. He would have his lulav and etrog with him. Korei b'Torah v'nosei et kapav. If he was reading remember they did their own reading. Each individual, when they called up, they read themselves. There wasn't the Baal Korei at that point. Okay, so if he did that, or if he was a Kohen and he had to get up and duchen, what happens? Manicho al gabe karka. He would put the lulav and esrog down. Okay. Olech levaker cholim ulinachem avelim. If he would go to do bikur cholim or to be comforting mourners, right? Lulavo biyado. He would bring his lulav with him. Okay. Nichnas lebeit hamidrash. When he went into the base midrash, mishager lulavo biyad bano. He would send his lulav and esrog home with his son, ubiyad avdo, or with his servant, ubiyad shlucho, or with a representative. My, right? When it comes to teach us, kamash malan lahodiacha kama hayu zrizin b'mitzvot. It comes to teach us how much they were, let's call it diligent, strong, right, about observing the mitzvot. Okay, we'll just go over a little bit more. The Rabbi Yossi Omer Yom Tov. And Rabbi Yossi said, Amar Abaye, just a little bit on the top of Mem Bet, Lo Shanu, Ela Shalo Yatsa Bo. They said this, he said, if they hadn't yet, I'm going to put in the word, fulfilled their obligation with the Arba Minim. Aval Yatsa Bo Chayav. Okay, but if he took it, all right, and okay, and let's say carried it out on Shabbat, okay, then he would be chayiv. All right, right. So we're finishing up. All right, okay, that's where we're gonna. All right, he's chayiv. Okay, the Gemara is going to challenge Abaye. Okay, and raise the question about his statement. I could simply say, okay, mida'ag behe nafake. Once he picked it up, wasn't he yotze? Okay, and then the Gemara is going to go into a long discussion here about picking up the etrog in
On the wrong side, right?
okay, when bracha, without bracha, things like that. So we'll stop there. All right. Sorry, guys, there was a technology problem apparently, and it took a little while for it to get resolved. Okay.
You, Rev.
All right, everybody. Stay well. Take care.
You too.
Oh, it was fine? There's lights and everything?
Apparently so. Take care, Mom.
You too. Oh. Gee.
Mother,
Good morning, sweetheart.
morning. You have to work a little harder on your bathroom.
What I do now? What's wrong?
Excuse me.
I know I
Your-
cleaned,
Your seats.
I cleaned it this morning.
No, I cleaned it just now.
I-
Don't tell me,
Oh,
Marvin, your
I-
seat.
Do you think I'm, Shirley,
Do
you think I'm,
don't see.
do you think I'm lying? I
No.
put on the light, I put on hot water on what do you call it, on toilet paper, and I washed the whole seat over.
Well, I just have to.
Okay,
And on the other side, on the floor, is filled with dried up urine. Like here is the toilet, and here is the floor on the other side. And I had to wash down the whole thing.
all right, I'll check it. I'll be more diligent, okay. uh, How you feeling this morning?
Okay.
Okay. I thought we lost this, I was almost ready to go on, what do you call it? Came on late, you had a problem. Where are you?